Starscream Kills presents, in a Geeky Guy production.
When we come to these next two subtypes, they're a little different. Not necessarily a bad way, but they just start to look at magic from an entirely different perspective. And the first one, well, let's put it this way. You know that artwork in the Lorwyn card, I Blight's Ending? Well, this next subtype would know that that comes from the second book in the Morningtide series, in which Idrin throws a death capsule down the mouth of a giant who was thrashing all his elf soldiers, while this giant was seeking to protect Rias when Rias was an Eye Blight. And so, in a certain sense, that introduces the next type of character known as Vorthos. For Vorthos, I have used the Prince Frog, because the idea is Vorthos is very much into the fairy tales. Vorthos comes from Mark Rosewater's sort of generic name for someone's 16th level ranger that they love to death, and in a certain sense this is a person that's very enraptured with the fantasy world of Magic the Gathering. These are the persons that love the flavor text, and they're also the persons that can tell you about the Total Recall plot twist in Agents of Artifice. They brave through the Shadowmoor series. They like the field guide to the Shards of Alara, and they like the plot twist between the red, white, or chaos order dynamic that you find in Chandra's backstory, as well as the rising action and conflict between Chandra and the chief antagonist in her present setting, as well as the personal conflict between Chandra and Gideon, the white or hieromancer for light mage that you find in the Purifying Fire by, I think, Laura Resnick is the name. And that's what Vorthos likes. Vorthos likes the plot, and then Vorthos likes to make a deck around that. So, like a tribal deck is very interesting to Vorthos. Sometimes players can end up with the same types of decks. For example, Spike might like the MBV because it kicks ass, but Vorthos might like it because it's all vampires, and they got like a Vampire Lestat, Anne Rice theme going on because they've read all the Anne Rice theme books up through sort of her Sympathy for the Devil book. Anyway, so sometimes players get in there through back ways. They may make a deck, says Rosewater, based around like all their favorite characters from Lorwyn or Shadowmoor or whatnot. It's sort of more of entering into the theme and experiencing sort of almost a role play with magic. And so that mono green player may have been mad at me because maybe they were actually, you know, how do I do this? They were quite Vorthos and thinking there's a certain way we should play Magic, and I was coming at Magic my way, and this isn't this. I mean, I like the books, but this is me. So that's part of it, understanding it. It's not that this is right, or this is right, or this is wrong, and this is wrong, but maybe we're just different, and that's okay. And part of understanding is if you're Vorthos, you have an advantage because you're not interested in having a landfall deck where you have 4 fetch lands that are in some extremely expensive paperboard. So there are advantages with that perspective, and part of it is being true to yourself. So that's Vorthos in a nutshell. In this next section, Mark Rosewater says that both Vorthos and Melvin are really not psychographic profile types, and in that he is absolutely correct. The reason is because, remember, psychographic profile types are about marketing, research, development, sales, ads, and these actually spawn more into psychology, which is a different field. So essentially he appeals more to Myers-Briggs. At any rate, there are 4 categories in Myers-Briggs. You have E, I, S, N, T, F, J, P. And it's basically 75% of the world on most of those and 25 on this, with the exception of TF. So here they are. extrovert, introvert, sensing, intuitive, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving. And they really are not bad. None of those are bad. They're just a certain mix, and so you end up with a certain characteristic. For example, when I last took it, I was an INFP. So that meant I was an introvert, intuitive, feeling, perceiver. And also, it depends how much. Like, I was not too far over the line into perceiving from the judging, perceiving line. So you have to kind of take it all with a grain of salt. And he somehow likes to play these two off versus really like this. And he says Vorthos on the second one is sensing and Melvin is perceiving. Or intuitive, excuse me. No, because really it would be that. The intuitive is the abstract, larger, interesting, and the sensing is the factual. And he tries to say head, heart, and when he does that, head for Melvin, heart for Vorthos, he's much closer. So let's go with that. Still, it kind of sucks, but we'll work with it. So, Vorthos likes the fantasy world. Melvin is this thinker-analyzer, and so in that sense, Melvin kind of gets looking like Johnny. But where Johnny's more about the combos and coming up with the combo deck, Melvin is more about analyzing the cards, their intricacies, their interdependencies, breaking down into the component parts, and finding that unique deck play. And that's why, Anthony Palermo says, I'm a Melvin Spike. Want to figure it out? Because I want to dominate. So that's kind of how they can work. So Melvin is very interested in taking the complexities of a card, not so much to dominate or to have a self-expression like Johnny wants, dominate like Spike, or have an experience like Timmy, but rather more of the head trip. That's Melvin. Melvin is the analyzer extraordinaire. So in that sense, it's hard to, market for Melvins because you have to have a real head trippy type of thing. Melvin turns magic into chess. You may think Johnny does that, but Melvin does this extraordinaire. Melvin's the kind of person that would like to read a 300-page book on the strategies of magic, if there were such a critter, or would write the book. And so, if you watch Palermo's Professors, you'll get it. You'll see Melvin in action. He even has sort of the kind of professor look. I mean, think of the title. He chose The Professor. So that's what Melvin is all about. So remember, is Melvin a salient piece in you? Is it a sub-piece? Is it just a back burner? What is it? And that's important to understand.